The desperate plea ambassador, Nixara's crystalline hands, trembled as she watched the holographic display flicker with the dying light of another world. The 12th planet, in 6 months, had just gone dark, its billions of inhabitants silenced forever by the relentless advance of the shadows of Nexus. Her translucent blue skin, normally radiant with the inner light of her people, had dimmed to the color of deep ocean waters, reflecting the despair that gripped her heart. The communication chamber aboard the Calarian flagship Harmony's voice buzzed with desperate activity. Officers with features resembling living gemstones moved frantically between control stations, their usual graceful movements now sharp with panic. Each incoming transmission brought worse news than the last. Ambassador called out communications. Officer Velther, his voice cracking with strain. We're receiving distress signals from the Andromaxi colonies. The shadows have broken through their outer defenses. Nixara closed her eyes, feeling the psychic screams of terror from across the galaxy through her empathic abilities. Her people, the Calarians, were natural diplomats and peacekeepers, blessed with the gift of feeling others' emotions. Right now, that gift felt like a curse as the fear and anguish of billions pressed against her consciousness. General Catherine, the Calarian military commander, materialized beside her through the chamber's transportation beam. His normally composed demeanor was shattered, replaced by the hollow look of a soldier who had watched his forces crumble against an unstoppable enemy. The latest reports, Ambassador, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The Shadow Fleet has grown to over 10,000 vessels. They're not just conquering worlds anymore, they're harvesting them. Every planet they touch becomes part of their war machine. Nixara had studied the ancient records of the shadows of Nexus. They were an old species, possibly one of the first to achieve interstellar travel. For millennia, they had slumbered in the dark spaces between galaxies, but something had awakened. Them 6 months ago, their return had been swift and merciless. What about the Galactic Alliance fleet? She asked, though she already knew the answer from Catherine's expression. Destroyed, he replied simply. Admiral Vexmore's entire Armada 3000 ships, representing 47 species, was annihilated at the Battle of Nexus Prime. The shadows don't just defeat us, Ambassador, they erase us. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Every being present understood what this meant. The Calarian Federation, the Andromaxi Republic, the Zephyrian Collective, all the peaceful civilizations that had built a golden age of cooperation and exploration, were facing extinction. There must be something, Nixara said, her voice carrying the weight of desperation. Some ally we haven't contacted, some weapon we haven't tried. Senior researcher Quindle approached with a datapad, his elderly frame moving slowly but purposefully. Among the Calarians, he was known for his vast knowledge of galactic history and forgotten civilizations. Ambassador, he said carefully, there is one option we have not explored. But I must warn you, it is dangerous beyond measure. Nixara turned to face him, her inner light brightening slightly with hope. Tell me. Quindel activated his datapad, displaying a star chart that showed a small, yellow star on the edge of known space. In the restricted archives, there are references to a world called Earth. It orbits the 3rd position around a D-type star in what the ancient texts call the Sol system. Why is it restricted? General Catherine asked, moving closer to examine the display. Because, General, it is what the old surveys classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest danger rating in our classification system. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every species in the galaxy knew about Deathworld's planets, so hostile that survival required constant warfare against the environment itself. The few species that evolved on such worlds were considered too dangerous for contact. The inhabitants, Quindel continued, call themselves humans. According to the ancient probes, their world has shaped them into something unique. They have survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and countless other disasters. More importantly, they have spent their entire evolutionary history at war with their environment, with each other, and with every threat their planet could produce. Nyxera felt a chill run through her crystalline form. You're suggesting we contact a species bred for war? I'm suggesting we contact the only species that might understand how to fight an enemy like the shadows of Nexus. The decision was not made lightly. 3 hours of debate followed, with advisors arguing the risks of contacting Deathworlders. But as reports continued to arrive of shadow fleets advancing on more worlds, the choice became clear. They had nowhere else to turn. The first attempt at communication was clumsy. Earth's technology was primitive by galactic standards, but the humans had been broadcasting radio signals for over a century. The Calarians managed to establish a connection through their translation protocols, sending their message directly to what appeared to be a military installation on the planet's surface. Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing monthly supply reports when the impossible happened. The communication came through channels that didn't exist, using technology that shouldn't work, carrying a message that changed everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. Within minutes, the secure briefing room beneath the Cheyenne mounting complex was filled with Earth's most important military leaders. Admiral Chen, a woman whose family had served in every major conflict for 3 generations, stood at the head of the table examining the alien message. The translation is rough, said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head of the xenolinguistics team that had been hastily assembled. But the meaning is clear. They are asking for military assistance against something called the Shadows of Nexus. General Robert, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward in his chair. These aliens, the Calarians, they're saying they represent dozens of species across the galaxy. According to their message, yes, sir. They're describing a threat that has already destroyed 12 worlds and is advancing on their core systems. Admiral Chen studied the tactical data the aliens had provided. The Shadow Fleet was massive, but their tactics seemed straightforward. Overwhelming force applied directly. It was the kind of strategy that had worked against peaceful civilizations that had never truly known war. What do we know about these shadows? She asked. Ancient species, Dr. Vasquez replied, consulting her notes. Technologically advanced, but apparently using tactics that haven't evolved in millennia. They rely on fear, superior numbers, and the fact that their enemies have never faced real warfare. General Hayes stood up, his decision already forming. They asked Deathworlders for help. Let's show them what that means. The response was swift. Within 18 hours, Admiral Chen found herself aboard the TDF Prometheus, flagship of humanity's first interstellar task force. The ship itself was a marvel of human engineering, sleek, deadly, and designed with one purpose in mind: to project Earth's military power across the stars. Captain Marcus Torres, the Prometheus's commanding officer, was a veteran of the lunar conflicts and the Mars colonial wars. His crew of 200 represented the best of Earth's military soldiers, pilots, and engineers who had trained their entire lives for conflicts that most humans couldn't imagine. Admiral Torres reported as the fleet prepared for departure. All vessels report ready for jump. We have 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, and 48 fighter squadrons. Total personnel, 15,000. Admiral Chen nodded as she looked out at the human fleet. Each ship carried weapons and technology that had been developed through centuries of human conflict. They were faster, more maneuverable, and more heavily armed than anything in the standard galactic arsenal. Signal the Calarian fleet, she ordered. Tell them the cavalry is coming. The jump to hyperspace was humanity's first step into the larger galaxy. As the stars stretched into lines of light around them, Admiral Chen couldn't help but think about what they were heading into. The Calarians had called humanity Deathworlders with a mixture of fear and hope. They were about to discover what that really meant. Ambassador Nixara received the human response while her ship retreated from the advancing Shadow Fleet. The message was brief, but carried a confidence that the Calarians had never encountered before. Help is on the way. Prepare for human warfare. She didn't understand what that meant, but as she watched the shadow vessels closing in on her homeworld, she prayed to the ancient stars that the humans would arrive in time. The galaxy's last hope now rested with a species that had turned survival into an art form and warfare into a science. The die was cast. Humanity was coming to war, and the shadows of Nexus were about to learn why no one in their right mind picked a fight with Deathworlders. Asterisk. The Deathworld response to human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kalaris system like a pack of predators emerging from the darkness. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the TDF Prometheus, watching as her tactical displays painted a picture of devastation that would have broken the spirit of any peaceful species. Kalaris Prime, the jewel of the Kalarian Federation, was under siege. Massive shadow vessels, each one the size of a small moon, hung in orbit around the planet like dark parasites. The surface of the world flickered with the fires of bombardment, and the space around it was littered with the wreckage of defending. Ships, sensor report, Admiral Chen ordered, her voice calm despite the carnage displayed before them. Lieutenant Commander James Park, the Prometheus's sensor officer, worked quickly at his station. Admiral, I'm reading approximately 800 shadow vessels in the immediate area. Their largest ships are 12 kilometers long. Energy signatures suggest they're using plasma-based weapons and gravitic shields. Captain Torres studied the tactical display with the eye of a veteran warrior. Their formation is interesting, Admiral. They're arranged in perfect geometric pattern circles within circles. It's almost ceremonial. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. They're not expecting a fight. They're performing an execution. On the planet's surface, Ambassador Nixara crouched in an emergency bunker as the shadow bombardment continued overhead. People's ability to sense emotions had become a torment as the fear and despair of billions pressed against her consciousness. Many Calarians had already fallen into empathic shock, overwhelmed by the collective terror of their dying world. General. Catherine materialized beside her through an emergency transport beam, his crystalline features dim with exhaustion. Ambassador, our remaining orbital platforms report the Shadow Fleet is preparing for final bombardment. They're charging their planet-killer weapons. Nixara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of failure crushing her spirit. They had sent their desperate message to the humans, but space was vast and time was short. Even if the Deathworlders had responded, they would arrive too late to save Kalaris Prime. Then the impossible happened. Every shadow vessel in the system suddenly found itself under attack from directions that shouldn't exist. The human fleet. had not announced their arrival with grand speeches or formal challenges. They had simply appeared and immediately begun killing everything that threatened the planet below. Captain Torres watched with professional satisfaction as the first wave of human torpedoes struck their targets. Each weapon carried a nuclear warhead enhanced with exotic matter, creating explosions that tore through the shadow ship's shields like paper. The ancient vessels, designed to intimidate and overwhelm, had never faced weapons crafted by a species that had perfected the art of mutual destruction. Direct hits on targets Alpha through Delta, reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the weapons control station. All 4 Shadow dreadnoughts are venting atmosphere and showing critical damage. Admiral Chen studied the enemy response with interest. The Shadow fleet was reacting exactly as she had predicted, with confusion and panic. Their perfect formations were breaking apart as ships scattered in all directions, trying to identify where the attacks were coming from. "They're not warriors," she observed. "They're executioners. They've never fought an enemy that hits back." The Prometheus dove through the Shadow formation like a shark among schools of fish. Her escort destroyers spread out in a complex pattern that humans called a wolf pack, each ship independent but coordinated through tactical data links that allowed them to strike with perfect timing. Commander Lisa Rodriguez, leading the destroyer squadron, watched as her ships tore through the shadow screening force. "Admiral, the enemy point defense systems are completely inadequate. They're not designed to stop fast-moving targets." This was humanity's first advantage. Human ships were built for speed and maneuverability, designed by a species that had learned to survive by being faster and smarter than larger predators. The massive shadow vessels, impressive as they were, moved like ancient whales trying to swat at attacking dolphins. Shadow Prime Vexter stood in the command chamber of his flagship, the Eternal Darkness, watching his forces fall apart with growing disbelief. For 3,000 years, his people had conquered civilizations across 17 galaxies. Never had they encountered an enemy that fought with such precision and ferocity. "What are these creatures?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Where did they come from?" "Unknown, my lord," the officer replied, his voice trembling. "They appeared without warning and began attacking immediately. Their weapons are unlike anything in our databases." Vexter studied the tactical display as another of his dreadnoughts exploded in a ball of nuclear fire. The attackers moved in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were actually perfectly coordinated. They struck from multiple directions simultaneously, concentrated their fire on single targets, and disappeared before his forces could respond effectively. "These are not the peaceful species we have been conquering," he realized. "These are predators." Admiral Chen watched the Shadow Fleet's formation collapse with the satisfaction of a chess master executing a perfect gambit. The enemy was falling back toward the planet, trying to use their massive vessels as shields while they attempted to regroup. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Execute Operation Deathblow." The human fleet suddenly changed tactics in a way that left the Shadow commanders completely confused. Instead of continuing their hit-and-run attacks, the human ships began moving in perfect synchronization, forming a three-dimensional lattice around the Shadow fleet that trapped them against the planet's gravity well. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the heavy cruiser Retribution, smiled as her ship's advanced targeting systems locked onto the Shadow flagship. "Admiral, we have a firing solution on the enemy command vessel." "All ships, concentrated fire on the primary target," Admiral Chen commanded. "Show them what human weapons can really do." The combined firepower of 12 human warships struck the Eternal Darkness simultaneously. Quantum torpedoes, particle beam cannons, and kinetic impactors, weapons developed through centuries of human warfare, converged on the massive, shadow vessel with devastating effect. Shadow Prime Vexter felt his ship shudder as alien weapons tore through shields that had withstood the firepower of entire galactic fleets. The humans weren't just attacking, they were systematically dismantling his flagship piece by piece, targeting critical systems with surgical precision. "My lord," his communications officer called out in panic, "the humans are transmitting a message." Admiral Chen's voice cut through the static of battle. Her words translated into every language known to the Shadow Fleet. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have threatened a species under our protection. Surrender, now or be destroyed." Vexter's response was predictable. He had conquered galaxies and would not surrender to unknown primitives from the edge of space. "All vessels, concentrate fire on the human flagship. Show these insects the power of the shadows." The Shadow Fleet's response was massive and poorly coordinated. Hundreds of plasma beams and gravitic missiles converged on the Prometheus, creating an impressive light show that accomplished absolutely nothing. The human flagship's shields, designed to withstand the fury of nuclear warfare, absorbed the enemy fire without strain. "Their weapons are impressive, but inefficient," reported Commander Torres. "They're using brute force instead of focused energy. It's like being attacked with a flashlight." Admiral Chen nodded. This was humanity's second advantage. Their technology had been forged in the crucible of total warfare. Every system on every human ship had been designed to survive in environments where the difference between victory and extinction was measured in milliseconds. "Return fire," she ordered simply. The Prometheus responded with a single shot from her main gunner particle beam that had been designed to punch through the armor of Earth's most advanced fortifications. The beam struck the eternal darkness amidships and carved completely through the massive vessel, like a sword through paper. Shadow Prime Vexter had just enough time to realize that his 3,000-year reign of terror was over before his flagship broke apart. In a silent explosion that lit up the system like a new star, the destruction of their command ship sent the remaining shadow vessels into complete panic. Some tried to flee, only to discover that human destroyers were faster and more agile than anything they could field. Others attempted to continue the fight, only to learn that human weapons technology was centuries ahead of anything they had encountered. In less than 3 hours, 800 shadow vessels had been reduced to drifting wreckage. Not a single human ship had been lost. Ambassador Nixera emerged from her bunker as the bombardment of her world suddenly ceased. Looking up through the dome of the underground complex, she could see human ships moving in precise formations through the debris field that had once been the unstoppable Shadow Fleet. Her empathic abilities, which had been overwhelmed by fear and despair, now detected something entirely different from the human vessels. Calm confidence mixed with protective determination. These Deathworlders had not come to conquer or destroy. They had come to defend. Asterisk. The communication from Admiral Chun arrived within minutes. Ambassador, Nightside. This is Admiral Sarah Chen. Your system is secure. We're prepared to escort your people to safety and pursue any remaining shadow forces. When the full scope of what had happened began to spread across the galaxy, the reaction was universal shock. The shadows of Nexus, ancient terror of 17 galaxies, had been completely annihilated by a species that most civilizations had never heard of. The peaceful races that had spent months running from an unstoppable enemy suddenly realized that The galaxy's balance of power had shifted overnight. The humans, these Deathworlders from the edge of space, had demonstrated that there were still predators, capable of hunting the hunters. Admiral Chen stood in the conference room aboard the Prometheus, surrounded by holographic representatives from dozens of grateful civilizations. Each species thanked humanity for their intervention, but she could see the question in their eyes. What did the humans want in return? "We want exactly what you want," she told them. "Peace, the freedom to explore the stars and build something better than what came before. The difference is that we understand something you don't. Sometimes peace can only be preserved by those willing to wage war." Ambassador Nixara's final report to the Galactic Council would become one of the most important documents in galactic history. In it, she wrote, "The humans are indeed Deathworlders, but not in the way we feared. They are a species forged by hardship into perfect protectors. They do not seek to conquer, they seek to defend. They have shown us that the galaxy's greatest hope for peace lies not in the hands of those who have never known war, but in the hands of those who understand it so well that they will do anything to prevent it." The shadows of Nexus were gone. Their 3,000-year reign of terror ended in a single afternoon. But their defeat had revealed something far more important to humanity's true place in the galaxy. They were not conquerors or destroyers. They were guardians, and the stars themselves were safer for their presence. Asterisk.